The encounter. In the deep silence of space, the crew of the Aegis were about to face an encounter that would shake the very foundation of everything they knew. The starship, a sleek marvel of human engineering, glided through an uncharted nebula. Colors beyond imagination swirled outside the ship's reinforced windows, a cosmic ballet of light and dark, an unknown world awaiting discovery. The crew, a mix of humans and aliens, had one mission: exploration. But what lay ahead would push them far beyond their understanding of the universe. Captain Zara Lawson stood at the helm, her sharp eyes scanning the screens, her mind racing with thoughts of what could lie beyond the veil of cosmic dust. Zara had been through countless missions, leading humanity's crew on dangerous assignments across hostile worlds, but this was different. This nebula was unlike anything they had encountered before. It was a place that even seasoned explorers feared, filled with swirling energy storms and electromagnetic interference. No one knew what, or who, might be hiding in its depths. Approaching the anomaly, Captain, reported Lieutenant Max Carter, the ship's tactical officer, his voice calm but with a hint of unease. He wasn't one to show fear, but even he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. His fingers danced over the controls, ready for anything. Sensors are detecting something. It's huge. And it's not moving. Zara raised an eyebrow. Not moving? Are you sure? Max nodded, his brow furrowed. It's not natural, Captain. I think it's a ship, but it doesn't match anything we've seen before. It's like a shadow in the nebula. Impossible to see clearly. Prepare to scan it, but keep your distance, Zara ordered. We don't know what we're dealing with yet. As the Aegis crept closer, a strange sense of foreboding filled the crew. The alien ship, or whatever it was, hung motionless in the swirling nebula, a dark shape barely visible in the cosmic mist. Its silhouette was jagged, almost like a predator lying in wait. The tension was palpable, every crew member knew that a ship this large could only mean one thing: this wasn't just an ordinary encounter. They were being watched. Then, the message came. A low, grating voice echoed over the comms, almost static, like it was being transmitted through a broken channel. The words sent a chill down Zara's spine. Turn back, or be consumed. The transmission was short, cryptic, and deeply unsettling. But Zara didn't flinch. She wasn't the kind to back down from a challenge, especially not when the future of humanity was at stake. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Whatever this alien ship was, it wasn't here to make friends. Status report, Lieutenant, Zara demanded, her voice calm but authoritative. Max's fingers flew over the console, his eyes darting between the screens. Captain, the ship is enormous. Its technology is unlike anything we've seen before. It's scanning us, and it's like it knows our every move. I can't get a clear read on its weapons, but I have a bad feeling about this. Zara's lips curled into a slight smile, her eyes gleaming with determination. Let's find out what they want. Bring us in closer, but be ready for anything. Her crew knew her well. They were used to the risks, the unpredictable nature of space exploration, and most of all, they trusted Zara to lead them through the unknown. But there was something about this mission that felt different. It was as if they were being drawn into a trap, one where they would have to fight to survive. As the Aegis crept forward, the alien ship's massive structure loomed larger on the view screen. There was no communication, no attempt at friendly contact, just an eerie stillness. It felt like they were crossing into forbidden territory. The ship's sensors began to flicker, glitching momentarily. A warning light flashed red. Captain, incoming, shouted Max, his voice tense. The crew was thrown into a panic as the first blast from the alien ship hit the Aegis. Sparks erupted from the control panels, alarms blared, and the entire ship rocked violently. The Aegis's hull groaned, and Zara was thrown forward into the command chair's restraints. The crew scrambled to regain control. Shields at 40%. Max shouted, sweat dripping down his face. They've fired at us. We're under attack. Zara gritted her teeth. Return fire, now. The Aegis's weapon systems hummed to life, but before they could retaliate, the alien ship released another blast, this time sending a surge of energy through the ship, knocking out the comms and power in several sections. The lights flickered, plunging them into darkness for a moment. Report. Zara snapped, her calm demeanor still intact, but her voice firm. We've lost primary power in sections 5 and 6, Elias, the ship's chief engineer, reported from his station, his voice strained. I'm rerouting backup systems, but it'll take a minute to get full power back. Get it done, Elias, Zara ordered. Max, get us out of their range, now. Max's fingers moved with lightning speed, steering the ship into evasive maneuvers. But the alien ship wasn't done. Another blast, even stronger than the last, came crashing into the Aegis, shaking the entire vessel and sending the crew into chaos. Sparks flew from consoles, and the walls trembled under the assault. Zara's mind raced. They were underpowered, underprepared, and completely outgunned. But one thing humans had always been good at was surviving the odds. And Zara Lawson wasn't going to let some unknown alien force take her ship without a fight. We're not running from this, Zara muttered to herself. Not today. With the crew still struggling to stabilize, Zara made her next move. Activate the cloaking device. I want to hide us until we can get a better idea of their tactics. We fight smarter, not harder. The Aegis's cloaking device flickered to life, shrouding the ship in an almost invisible field. They couldn't outrun the enemy, but they could outthink them. As the ship moved silently through the nebula, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of something much bigger. The first encounter was never the end. And this was going to be a battle that would show the galaxy just how terrifying humans could be. The unexpected ally. The Aegis drifted silently through the nebula, cloaked and hidden, its once dazzling lights now dimmed to a soft glow. The crew was tense, but there was a collective sense of resolve. They were out of immediate danger, but only just. As they regrouped in the command center, the eerie stillness of space weighed heavily on everyone. Zara stood at the front, her fingers gripping the armrest of her chair, her mind focused on their next move. We need to know more about the enemy, Zara said, her voice calm but sharp. What exactly are we dealing with? Max Carter, the ship's tactical officer, worked frantically at his console, his eyes scanning through a series of encrypted signals and sensor data. There's very little information, Captain. This ship, it's unlike anything we've encountered. It's advanced, far more so than anything we've built. And there's something else, something strange about their energy signatures. It's almost as if they're adapting to our moves. Adapting? Zara repeated, her brow furrowed. You mean they're learning? Max nodded grimly. Exactly. Every time we change our course, it's like they anticipate it before we even make the move. They're not just responding, they're preempting. Zara's mind raced. This wasn't just an attack, it was a calculated maneuver, one designed to make them hesitate, to make them second-guess every decision. We can't just sit here and wait for them to find us, she said firmly. We need a plan, and we need it fast. Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden transmission, one that came through on a frequency they hadn't been using. It was a weak signal, but the words were clear, and they struck a chord deep within her. We do not wish to fight. Zara exchanged a look with Max. He raised an eyebrow, puzzled. Who's sending that? The voice crackled again, more desperate this time. We are not your enemy. We are, like you. Zara sat back, a cold feeling settling in her chest. Like us, she whispered. Could it be possible? Were they dealing with another human ship, or something else entirely? Before she could ask another question, the transmission continued, almost as if the speaker could sense their hesitation. We are survivors. The ones who came before you, they've gone. But we can help you. You must trust us. Max looked to Zara. Captain, this could be a trap. It's too convenient, too easy. We can't trust it. But Zara's instincts were telling her otherwise. Something about the tone of the voice, frantic, desperate, almost pleading, seemed genuine. She had learned through years of commanding that not every threat in the galaxy was what it seemed. Humanity's resilience had made them allies in unlikely places, and sometimes the greatest strength came from the most unexpected sources. Leave the cloak active, Zara ordered. But open a secure channel. Let's hear them out. If this is a trap, we'll be ready. But if there's a chance they can help, we need to take it. Max hesitated for only a moment before nodding. The comms flickered, and the voice on the other end resumed, clearer now, with an air of cautious optimism. We are the Arcadia. Our species was once thriving, like yours. But something happened. A war. A conflict that nearly wiped us out. Now, we are alone, isolated, scattered across the stars. We do not want to repeat our mistakes. We saw your ship and we saw your strength. We know you have what it takes to survive, just like we did. Zara leaned forward, captivated by the words. The Arcadia. What happened to your species? The voice seemed to tremble as it responded. A war between our own kind, over resources, over power. We were on the brink of extinction before we realized the truth. We are all we have. The other species you face, they are the remnants of that war. And they will come for you next. Zara's heart skipped a beat. The war. The conflict. Everything was starting to make sense. This wasn't just an alien attack, they were caught in the crossfire of a long-standing war between ancient civilizations, one that had claimed countless lives, and now humanity was unknowingly becoming a target. What do you want from us? Zara asked, her voice steady, but her mind racing. The Arcadia's voice grew softer, almost reluctant. We want to offer you something. Knowledge. Technology. We can help you defeat them. But you must help us in return. We need a ship, a vessel powerful enough to navigate the dangers we face. A vessel like yours. Max's eyes widened. They want us to give them our ship. Zara looked down, her mind working quickly. She could see the logic in it, they were offering knowledge, advanced technology, something that could tip the scales in their favor. But the price? Handing over the Aegis? That wasn't something she was ready to consider. Not without knowing more. Why us? She asked, leaning forward. Why should we trust you? Because we are the last of our kind, Captain, the voice answered, its tone now somber. We have no one else to turn to. And we have seen what humanity can do. You're kind, you are resilient, resourceful, and you have something that we no longer possess, hope. Zara was quiet for a long moment, contemplating the enormity of the decision ahead. If what they were saying was true, then they were caught in a war they didn't fully understand. But could they trust these mysterious survivors? And even if they did, what was the price they would have to pay? Give me a moment, Zara said. I need to consult with my crew. She turned to Max, who was still watching the screen, his expression one of cautious disbelief. Do you believe them? She asked quietly. Max sighed. I don't know, Captain. There's something strange about it. But if they're telling the truth, we might not have a choice. Either we help them, or we'll be fighting this war alone. Zara nodded slowly. Prepare a reply. Tell them we're willing to hear them out, but we need more information. And Max, keep your eyes on everything. If they make a move, we need to be ready. As Zara's words echoed through the quiet bridge, she felt the weight of her decision settle upon her. Humanity had faced challenges before, but this was different. This time, the future of an entire species, and the survival of humanity itself, hung in the balance. And the most terrifying part was, they didn't know who the true enemy was yet. A dangerous alliance. The Aegis had been drifting silently for hours, the crew lost in their own thoughts as they processed the weight of the conversation with the Arcadia. The mystery of their plight, the promise of advanced technology, and the fear of an impending war all swirled in Zara's mind. She sat in her captain's chair, staring out at the dark expanse of space, her hands resting on the armrests as she tried to steady her thoughts. Max Carter had been reviewing the data, his fingers tapping rapidly on the control panel, yet his expression was grim. He didn't trust the Arcadia, and Zara couldn't entirely blame him. The whole situation felt off. But they were running out of options, and every minute they waited, the threat grew closer. "Captain, I've compiled all the available intel on the Arcadia's claims. I'm sending it through now," Max reported, his voice steady but laced with concern. "There's no mention of their species in any of the databases. They've been completely erased from known history." Zara's heart sank. The more she thought about it, the stranger it seemed. So they could be lying. "I'm not saying they are," Max replied. "But no records, no communications, nothing. It's like they never existed. That raises a lot of red flags." Zara's fingers drummed on the chair's armrest, a sound that reverberated through the quiet command center. "We can't ignore this. Either we act now, or we'll be caught in the crossfire. They're right about one thing, they're not the only ones who know about us now. Those others, the ones who attacked us, are watching." "Understood, Captain," Max said, giving her a quick nod. He turned to his console and sent the encoded message back to the Arcadia. They would meet, but the terms would be theirs. The Arcadia would need to prove their value before any alliance could be formed. Hours later, the Aegis emerged from the nebula, its engines barely humming as it glided toward the coordinates provided by the Arcadia. Zara stood at the bridge, watching as the stars ahead began to grow larger. Her crew was on edge, their hands tense on controls, eyes flicking to her for direction. Every crew member knew that this moment could be a turning point, either they would find allies to help them fight, or they would walk straight into the heart of a deadly trap. Max stood beside her, his face set in a mask of uncertainty. "We're approaching the coordinates, Captain. No signs of hostility so far, but I don't like the way they've set up their signal. It's almost too perfect. A controlled encounter." Zara didn't respond immediately. She had her own concerns, her mind circling back to the Arcadia's cryptic message. "We are like you." What did that mean? Were they truly human? Were they just another victim of the war, or were they something more? Her gut told her something wasn't right. And yet, as they neared the location, she could feel the pressure mounting. Suddenly, the communication console flickered, and a low hum filled the air. The voice of the Arcadia spoke again, cutting through the tension like a knife. "You've come. We were beginning to fear that you would turn away. Prepare to dock with us, Captain. We are ready to begin the exchange." Zara took a deep breath. "Open a channel," she ordered, her voice steady, though the weight of the situation was pressing down on her. This was it. They were about to meet the Arcadia face to face. The bridge fell silent as the screen blinked, and a figure appeared in the holographic transmission. Zara's breath caught in her throat. It wasn't what she expected at all. The figure was humanoid, but there was something distinctly off about them. Their skin was a translucent silver, and their eyes, glowing with an unnatural light, appeared too large for their face. They wore a simple suit of armor-like material, which shimmered with an almost liquid-like quality, reflecting the light of distant stars. The figure's voice was calm and melodic, though it carried an undertone of urgency. "Greetings, Captain Zara. I am Elendor, leader of the Arcadia. We are pleased that you've chosen to trust us. We do not have much time." Zara's brow furrowed. There was something about Elendor's appearance that made her uneasy. She had expected something more alien, but this was not what she had imagined. The being seemed almost human. It was both a relief and a threat. Human-like, yet clearly not. And that made them all the more dangerous. "We're not here for a simple exchange, Elendor," Zara said, her voice firm. "We need to know why we should trust you. We need to know what your people can do for us, and what you expect in return." Elendor's eyes glowed brighter, but their expression remained neutral. "We offer knowledge, Captain. Weapons, technology, and a strategic advantage over your enemies. In return, we ask for something simple. Your help in protecting what remains of our kind." Zara crossed her arms, her mind racing. "And why can't you fight your own battles? Why should we put our trust in you?" The Arcadian leader's face hardened, their voice carrying an edge of emotion. "Because our enemies have destroyed all that we were. We have no power left. You are the last hope we have. The war we waged was not just with other species, it was with our own kind. Now, we are scattered, broken. We have no ships, no defenses, and no way to rebuild. But we know what you can do, Captain. Humanity is strong. You are resourceful. You've survived when others couldn't. You will fight for what matters." Zara studied Elendor closely. They were telling the truth, or at least, that was her gut feeling. Their desperation was real, and she could sense the sincerity in their words. The Arcadia had seen the same destruction that humanity had, and their plight mirrored hers in many ways. "Tell me more about these enemies of yours," Zara demanded. "Who are they, and why should we fight them?" Elendor hesitated, their glowing eyes dimming for a moment as if recalling painful memories. "They are remnants of a civilization that sought to rule the stars. They destroyed everything in their path, including us. They're relentless, unforgiving. We barely escaped. Now they hunt us across the galaxy, and they will hunt you too." Zara felt the chill of their words, and for the first time, the gravity of the situation truly sank in. They weren't just facing an alien threat. They were facing a war that had already claimed one species, and it could claim theirs next. Max's voice interrupted the tense silence. "Captain, we've just received a signal from the enemy. They're coming." Zara's eyes narrowed as she turned to face him. "Prepare for battle. We don't know how long we have, but we can't waste any more time. Elendor, you're right. If we're going to survive, we need to work together. Show us what you have." The Arcadian leader nodded once, their eyes glinting with a renewed hope. "We will. Prepare for the next step." As the transmission ended and the crew prepared for the unknown, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to make a choice that would change everything. They were no longer just fighting to survive. They were fighting for the future, of humanity, and perhaps the galaxy itself. The test of trust. The Aegis shuddered as it entered the Arcadia's docking bay. Zara stood tall in the command center, her posture unwavering as the ship settled against the docking clamps. Her crew was tense, weapons checked and ready, eyes scanning for any sign of betrayal. The air felt thick with anticipation, everyone knew that this could be their last opportunity to survive, or the first step into a deadly trap. Max Carter, ever vigilant, turned to Zara. "Captain, are we sure about this? We've seen nothing but strange behavior from the Arcadia so far. I don't like it." Zara met his eyes, her expression resolute. "We don't have a choice, Max. If we don't align with them, we might not survive the next wave of attacks. But keep your guard up. If they make one wrong move, we'll end this right here, right now." Max nodded, though there was doubt in his gaze. He didn't trust Elendor or the Arcadia's promises, but Zara was right, time was running out. With every passing moment, the enemy was drawing closer, and they had to act. The massive doors of the docking bay slid open with a deep mechanical groan, revealing a dark, shadowy expanse. The Arcadia's ship was far larger than the Aegis, a sleek, elegant structure that appeared to be made of smooth, metallic surfaces that shifted like liquid as if the ship itself was alive. It didn't look like any alien technology they had ever seen. Its design was more advanced, more refined, almost unsettling in its perfection. "Stay sharp," Zara commanded as she led her team down the gangway. The Aegis's crew had been briefed on what to expect, but no one was truly prepared for the strange and unnerving silence of the Arcadian vessel. The entire area was eerily quiet, save for the soft hum of their own footsteps echoing on the metallic floor. It was as if the ship had been waiting for them, the atmosphere thick with something unspoken. They were met by Elendor and a group of Arcadian soldiers. The beings that surrounded Elendor were of similar appearance, translucent, silver skin, glowing eyes, and those perfectly symmetrical, almost unnerving features. They moved with a fluid grace, but there was no warmth in their gestures, no welcoming smiles. Only business. Elendor's voice, when it came, was calm but commanding. "Welcome to the Arcadia, Captain Zara. I trust your journey here was uneventful." Zara studied the leader, trying to gauge their sincerity. "Uneventful enough. But you'll forgive me if I don't take your word at face value. We're here for answers, Elendor. And I'll need more than promises of cooperation before I consider our alliance." Elendor's glowing eyes softened, though their expression remained unreadable. "Understandable. I expect no less from someone of your caliber. But let me show you something that may change your mind." With a subtle gesture, Elendor motioned for a door on the far side of the docking bay to open. A hidden panel slid aside, revealing a high-tech, sealed chamber. The lights flickered briefly as the door opened, and a strange, faint hum filled the air. Inside, a holographic display flickered to life, revealing a large, circular map of the galaxy. Zara's eyes widened as the map zoomed in on an area near the outer rim of known space. "What is this?" "This," Elendor began, "is a map of the enemy's territory. They are not a single species, Captain, but a coalition of others, warlike, ruthless, and determined to dominate all life in the galaxy. These are the last remnants of a lost empire, one that once ruled the stars through sheer force." Zara stepped forward, examining the map more closely. The enemy's reach extended far beyond what she had imagined. Entire systems had been swallowed up, entire species eradicated. It was clear that the enemy was not just interested in expansion, they were bent on destruction. "And you?" Zara asked, her voice tinged with disbelief, "You're telling me that you fought them and lost? You're nothing but survivors now." Elendor's expression darkened for a moment, their eyes flickering with something almost like regret. "Our downfall was inevitable. We were once a mighty race, but our hubris led us to forget the basic truths of survival. We made enemies among our own kind, and when the war began, we underestimated their power. The enemy took everything from us. Our fleets, our colonies, our cities, gone." There was an uncomfortable silence in the room as the weight of their words settled over the crew of the Aegis. Zara had seen destruction before, she had fought in skirmishes, watched battles tear through star systems. But this? This was on an entirely different scale. The destruction the Arcadia had suffered was unfathomable. Max broke the silence, his voice cold. "So, what exactly is it that you want from us, Elendor? You're asking us to join a losing battle. Why? What makes you think we stand a chance against this kind of force?" Elendor's glowing eyes fixed on Max with an intensity that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. "Because we know you can win. Your kind has fought battles for far longer than we have. You adapt, you learn, you survive. You have something that the other species don't. The spark of innovation. You are a species born for war, but not the kind of war these enemies know. Your ingenuity, your resilience, these are the qualities that will allow you to defeat them." Zara looked over at Max, then back at Elendor. She didn't fully trust the Arcadia, but the truth was staring her in the face. They couldn't fight this war alone. No one could. If the Arcadia was right, humanity might be their only hope. "We'll consider your offer," Zara said finally, her voice steady but filled with uncertainty. "But don't think for a second that we'll just follow blindly. We need to see the proof. Show us your technology. Show us what we're fighting for." Elendor nodded solemnly, their face unreadable. "Of course, Captain. We will begin the demonstration immediately." The next few hours were spent in what could only be described as a tense negotiation. Zara's crew inspected the Arcadia's technology, examined the weapons they had promised, and questioned their methods of defense. While the Arcadia provided evidence of their advanced technology, ships, weapons, and defensive systems, it became increasingly clear that their promises of support came with strings attached. They were offering the Aegis the chance to help them rebuild, to use their advanced weaponry to fight against the enemy, but it was also an opportunity to pull humanity into a war they were not prepared for. Max and Zara stood at the edge of a holographic display, watching as data flowed rapidly across the screen. He crossed his arms, still skeptical. "It's a nice offer, Captain, but something about this feels off. Why trust them?" Zara turned to face him, her voice quiet but firm. "Because we don't have another choice, Max. If we don't help them, they'll be wiped out. And the enemy will keep coming for us." Max met her gaze, and for a moment, it seemed like he was about to protest. But then, he nodded slowly. "I hope you're right, Captain." As the tension continued to build, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the edge of something monumental, an alliance that could either save them all, or destroy them completely. The Arcadia was not just offering help, they were offering a test of humanity's resilience, of their ability to rise to the challenge. And as the Aegis prepared to take the first step into a war unlike any they had ever faced, Zara understood one thing with absolute certainty: there would be no turning back. The unseen enemy. The crew of the Aegis stood on the precipice of an uncertain future. After hours of intense discussions and technical demonstrations, the decision had been made. They would join forces with the Arcadia in the coming war, despite the lingering doubts in their minds. The Aegis was now part of something far bigger than themselves. But Zara knew that no amount of technology or alien weapons could change the one truth that had always held steady: survival was never guaranteed. Even with the Arcadia's support, they were stepping into a storm. As the ship powered up, preparing for its journey to the front line, Zara found herself in her quarters, staring at the vast expanse of stars outside. The war would not be won in one battle, or even in one campaign. It would take time, strategy, and, most of all, the very thing that made humans different from the other species in the galaxy: resilience. But just as she was about to turn away, a soft beep from her console broke the silence. She leaned forward, her heart skipping a beat as she read the incoming message. It was from the Arcadian High Command. Urgent. Enemy fleet detected in Sector 12C. We are preparing for immediate countermeasure deployment. Prepare for battle. Her fingers hovered over the console. This was no longer a matter of preparation. The enemy had arrived, and they were already on the move. No longer was there time for the luxury of cautious steps or second guesses. They had to fight, and they had to fight now. The Aegis shot out of the Arcadia's docking bay, the bright lights of the Arcadian city fading into the darkness of space behind them. Zara's crew was tense but ready. They knew what was coming. Max Carter stood beside her in the command center, his face grim as he reviewed the tactical data. "I'm telling you, Zara, something about this doesn't sit right with me. I've been around long enough to know when a battle is more than it seems. And this feels like a setup." Zara studied the tactical display, the enemy fleet in Sector 12C clearly visible. But Max was right, there was something strange about the movement. The enemy fleet was acting in a way that didn't match their typical patterns. They weren't converging in one place. They were scattered, almost as if they were hunting, waiting for something. They're not just attacking, Zara murmured, eyes narrowing. They're probing. Looking for weaknesses. Before Max could respond, the ship jolted suddenly, throwing them both forward. A red alert blared through the speakers. Shields at 50%. Incoming fire from an unknown source, the voice of the ship's AI echoed through the command center. Zara snapped into action, her mind shifting from strategic thinking to instinct. Divert all power to forward shields. Get us out of here, full burn. The Aegis lurched as its engines roared to life. It was a dance of death as the ship weaved between bursts of enemy fire, returning fire with precise, calculated shots. But the enemy was too numerous. The scanners showed multiple signatures, warships, advanced drones, and something far worse lurking just beyond the reach of their sensors. They've got reinforcements. Max shouted. The enemy fleet's not all here, Captain. There's something else coming from the dark zone. Zara's eyes flashed. I know. We need to take down their comms. If we can break their communication lines, we might stand a chance. Without hesitation, she gave the order. The Aegis broke from its evasive maneuvers and made a sharp, daring run toward the enemy flagship. If they could silence their command, the enemy would fall into chaos. As they approached, the tension in the command center was palpable. The massive warship ahead was like a black monolith, its hull gleaming with an eerie, reflective surface that seemed to absorb light. It had an almost organic quality, something unsettlingly alive about it. Here we go, Zara muttered, focusing on the task at hand. Firing all weapons, the weapons officer shouted. The Aegis unleashed a barrage of missiles and plasma bolts, targeting the flagship's central comm array. The shields shimmered briefly before collapsing under the sheer force of the strike. It wasn't enough to destroy the ship, but it sent a clear message. They had pierced the outer shell. But just as victory seemed within their grasp, the flagship retaliated. A beam of dark energy shot out from its core, striking the Aegis directly. The ship groaned under the assault, and the hull rattled violently. Sparks flew from the control panels as the crew struggled to regain control. We've lost power to auxiliary systems. Hull integrity at 40%, the ship's AI reported. Max cursed, gripping the side of his console. This is bad. We can't keep this up much longer. But just when it seemed like all hope was lost, the unexpected happened. From the darkness beyond the flagship, a new enemy vessel appeared, a ship unlike anything Zara had seen. Its hull was matte black, jagged and irregular, like it had been grown rather than built. It was large, far larger than anything the enemy had shown so far. And it wasn't alone. A small fleet of smaller, similar vessels appeared around it, cutting through space like shadows. These ships didn't fire at first. Instead, they surrounded the Aegis, as if preparing to trap them. Captain, we've got a new problem, Max said, his voice tinged with disbelief. What are those ships? Zara's heart skipped a beat as she studied the new arrivals. Her instincts screamed danger. This wasn't just another faction, it was something far worse. They're not just ships, Zara murmured, dread creeping into her voice. They're drones. But not just any drones. These are weapons. Weapons that think. Weapons that adapt. The new fleet began to close in, and the Aegis was caught in the middle. Zara's mind raced, but there was no time for elaborate strategies. They were going to have to improvise, and fast. Max, get to engineering. I need you to reroute all power to the forward shields and weapons. We'll need every ounce of energy to survive this. Max nodded and sprinted toward the door. Zara stayed at the helm, her eyes fixed on the incoming threat. This was no longer just a fight for survival, it was a fight for humanity's place in the galaxy. But even as the first shots were fired, Zara felt something inside her stir. The enemy was not just trying to destroy them, they were testing them. This was their first move in a much larger game, one that would demand everything the Aegis and its crew could give. And Zara knew that in this war, it wasn't the ships or weapons that would determine victory, it was humanity itself. Its ingenuity. Its will to survive. And the fire that burned in their hearts. She looked around the bridge, eyes meeting the gazes of her crew. They were ready. Ready to fight. Ready to win. And they weren't going to stop. Not now. Not ever. We fight, Zara said, her voice low and filled with determination. And we win. The heart of the storm. The Aegis trembled as another barrage of fire from the enemy ships slammed against its shields. Every impact reverberated through the hull, sending waves of shaking energy through the crew's bones. Zara stood firm in the command chair, gripping the armrests, her eyes locked on the tactical display. The new enemy fleet was closing in fast, their movements too coordinated, too deliberate. This wasn't a random attack, it was a carefully planned siege. Max Carter was back at his station, fingers flying across the control panels, rerouting power and issuing orders. Shields are holding, Captain, but we can't take much more of this. The enemy's going to overwhelm us if we don't make a move soon. Zara's gaze flicked over to him, but her mind was elsewhere, calculating. There was something off about these new ships. They weren't like anything they'd encountered before, too efficient, too precise. Zara's instincts told her that these weren't just mindless drones. No, these ships were designed to think. To adapt. And that meant they had to fight smarter, not harder. Max, Zara said, her voice sharp. Is there any way we can hack into their network? Disrupt their control systems? Max paused, eyes narrowing as he scanned the readouts. It's risky, Captain. These ships are advanced. If we make the wrong move, we might give them control of our systems. Zara turned toward him, steely determination in her eyes. We don't have a choice. Do it. Max didn't hesitate. His fingers tapped in a rapid rhythm, sending pulses of electronic warfare toward the enemy fleet. Zara watched the tactical display, every second feeling like an eternity. For a moment, the screens flickered, and then the enemy ships seemed to stutter. One of them slowed down, the angular, jagged hull twitching erratically. A sign of something breaking in their systems. Got one, Max grinned. Their comms are scrambled. We've isolated their central control node. Keep going, Zara ordered. Target the rest of them. We need to disorient them before they get their bearings back. But as Max sent another wave of attacks, new, terrifying sight filled the screen. A massive, dark energy beam shot out from the heart of the enemy fleet, the flagship, Zara guessed. It cut through space like a lightning strike, aimed straight at the Aegis. There was no time to dodge. No way to avoid it. The beam connected with their shields, and for a terrifying second, the ship's systems flickered. Lights went out, alarms blared, and Zara felt her stomach lurch. We're losing power, shouted the ship's engineer from behind her. The shields won't last. Zara's heart pounded in her chest. The Aegis was no longer a warship, it was a floating target, drifting in space. Every instinct told her to take the ship and run, to break away and retreat. But she couldn't. Not now. Not when humanity's survival was at stake. The enemy fleet was closing in. They could outgun the Aegis in a matter of minutes. Max! Zara shouted. Do we have any offensive capabilities left? Max's fingers flew across the console, his face set in determination. We've got one shot left. But we need to make it count. Zara's eyes scanned the display, trying to think of a way to give them the upper hand. Then, a thought struck her. If they couldn't outgun the enemy, they would have to outsmart them. Get us within range of their flagship, Zara said, voice firm. I have a plan. Max raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. A plan? Captain, we're running out of time. They're already targeting us with another shot. But Zara's mind was made up. We don't need to destroy their ship. We need to cripple it. If we can disable their flagship, the rest of the fleet will fall apart. Max hesitated for a moment, but he didn't argue. On it. The Aegis jolted as it surged forward, the remaining engines sputtering but still functional. Zara's knuckles turned white as she gripped the console. The massive enemy flagship loomed closer, a towering silhouette in the distance. It was their only shot. Hold steady. Zara barked to the crew. The ship lurched again as another blast slammed against the shields, and this time, they flickered dangerously. Shields at 30%, the AI's voice crackled. Get us closer, Max. Zara shouted, every word feeling like a command to her own resolve. She had to believe in this. They had no other choice. Max's voice came through gritted teeth. Almost there, Captain. I need 5 more seconds. Zara's mind raced. She knew this was it. They couldn't survive much longer, not without taking some risks. She adjusted the ship's trajectory, preparing for the final push. They had only one chance to strike. If they missed, they were done. 5 seconds, Max muttered, glancing up at the countdown. Zara's breath caught in her throat as she saw the massive beam from the enemy flagship charging up again. It was going to hit them. Now, Max. Now, she ordered. With a growl of engine power, the Aegis slammed into position. The final shot fired, but this time, it wasn't aimed at the enemy flagship. Zara had calculated the precise angle. She'd ordered the last missile in their arsenal to lock onto the flagship's weak spot, a point in the rear engines that could be exploited. The missile streaked forward, the moment of impact stretching in slow motion. And then, boom. The missile hit the target with pinpoint accuracy, piercing the flagship's rear engines. The explosion sent a ripple of light through space, the massive warship's engines erupting in a violent bloom of flame and debris. The ship's core faltered, and the dark energy beam flickering out like a dying candle. Yes. Max exclaimed. Direct hit. The flagship's engines are down. But even as the flagship's power systems collapsed, Zara knew the battle was far from over. The enemy ships surrounding them were still operational, and now, with their flagship compromised, the real threat would emerge. She turned to Max, eyes burning with determination. Get ready. This fight's not over. The crew stood silent but resolute. They had landed the first blow, but the war had only just begun. The true test of their resolve was yet to come. The silence of space was broken only by the hum of the ship's damaged systems. Zara sat back in her chair, her eyes narrowing as she stared at the now disabled enemy flagship. It was still out there. The battle wasn't won, but it was far from lost. Bring up the rest of their fleet, she ordered, voice steady despite the tension. Let's finish this. The Aegis was battered, its hull marked by the scars of battle, but its spirit remained unbroken. This was humanity's fight, and no alien force, no matter how advanced or powerful, could stand against the heart of the human will to survive. The final gambit. The Aegis hung in space like a wounded beast, its engines sputtering but still holding together. The ship had endured the worst the enemy had to offer, but the battle wasn't over. Zara could feel the weight of every decision pressing down on her. They had done well to cripple the enemy flagship, but the rest of their fleet was still coming at them with full force. They couldn't afford another mistake. Max Carter stood at his station, eyes locked onto the monitors. The flagship is down, Captain, but they're not backing off. The other ships are closing in fast. We don't have much time. Zara's mind raced. The Aegis had already used its last missile, and its remaining weapons were unreliable at best. They were running out of options, but she refused to give in to panic. There had to be something they could do. Zara, Max's voice broke through her thoughts. The enemy fleet is trying to regroup. If we can get close enough, we might be able to board their command ship. It's risky, but it could throw them off balance long enough for us to escape. Zara considered the proposal for a moment. Boarding the command ship wasn't a conventional tactic, but if they could infiltrate the enemy's command center, it might just be the advantage they needed. The idea was bold, almost reckless, but Zara had learned long ago that the best way to survive in this kind of fight was to think outside the box. "We're going for it," Zara said, her voice calm but resolute. "Get us within boarding range, Max. We'll take the fight to them." Max didn't question her. He merely adjusted the course, his fingers flying across the controls. Zara watched the enemy fleet grow larger on the view screen, their ships massive and intimidating. She had to admit, they were impressive. These aliens were unlike anything humanity had faced before. But that didn't mean they couldn't be beaten. "Prepare for boarding, everyone," Zara announced to her crew, her voice carrying through the ship. "We're going to infiltrate their flagship. Stick together and stay sharp. Once we're inside, we'll disable their command systems and give our ship a fighting chance." The crew members around her nodded, their faces set in grim determination. The situation was dire, but they were all committed to the same goal, survival. They knew that if they didn't act now, they would never get another chance. It was do or die. Max maneuvered the Aegis into position, dodging enemy fire with practiced precision. The Aegis was damaged, but its agility had always been its strength. Zara gripped the armrests of her chair, watching as the enemy ships closed in. Their weapons lit up, bright streaks of fire cutting through the dark void of space. The Aegis was a target, but Zara knew she could still get them close enough. "Ready the boarding pods," Zara ordered. The ship's weapon systems were mostly offline, but the boarding pods were still functional. They were designed for situations like this, small, fast, and deadly. The crew would use them to infiltrate the enemy flagship and take control from within. "Pods prepped," came the response from the engineering team. "Ready when you are, Captain." Zara took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest. The tension in the air was palpable. This was it. They were about to make their final move. If they succeeded, they would cripple the enemy's fleet from the inside out. If they failed. "Pods away," she commanded. The small, sleek pods shot out from the Aegis, their engines firing to carry them toward the enemy flagship. Zara watched as the pods streaked through space, narrowly avoiding enemy fire. The enemy ships were beginning to retaliate, but the pods were too fast, too small to target accurately. "Pods are inbound," Max reported. "We'll be at the flagship in less than 2 minutes." Zara's eyes locked onto the flagship on the view screen. It was massive, far larger than the Aegis, and its weapons were now trained on them. The enemy knew what they were trying to do, and they would fight to stop it. Zara's fingers tightened around the console as she braced for impact. "Incoming," shouted one of the crew members. A massive beam of energy shot out from the enemy flagship, slamming into the Aegis with devastating force. The ship shook violently, alarms blaring as the shields flickered. But Zara didn't flinch. The Aegis had taken worse hits and kept going. They had no choice but to push forward. "Hold on!" Max shouted, his voice strained as he fought to keep the ship steady. "Just a little longer." Zara glanced over at the boarding team, who were preparing for their final descent. They would be landing directly on the flagship, and their job was simple: disable the enemy's command systems, sow chaos, and take control of the ship. Once they did that, the battle would shift in humanity's favor. "Team, this is it," Zara said over the comms. "You have one shot. Get inside, disable their systems, and get out. We'll cover you from here." A chorus of "Aye, Captain," crackled through the comms as the pods closed in on their target. Zara's stomach churned with a mixture of anticipation and dread. This was their final gambit, their last chance. If they failed, the Aegis and everyone aboard would be lost. The pods made contact with the flagship, and a violent jolt rocked the Aegis. Zara gritted her teeth as she watched the crew members disembark, their boots hitting the enemy ship's hull. They moved fast, ducking into the enemy's airlocks and disappearing inside. It was now or never. "Max," Zara said, her voice steady, "prepare to launch a full-scale retreat once we've disrupted their systems. We won't stay too long." Max's eyes were locked on the tactical display. "Understood, Captain. I'll be ready." Zara held her breath as she waited. The minutes dragged on, each one stretching into an eternity. Finally, the comms came alive. "Captain, the systems are down. We've disabled their command center. The flagship is ours." Zara's heart skipped a beat. They had done it. The flagship was neutralized, and the enemy fleet was thrown into disarray. Without their command center, they would be like a headless dragon, powerless and disorganized. "Good work," Zara said, her voice filled with pride. "Now let's get out of here." The Aegis pulled away, and the enemy ships, now leaderless, were left to drift aimlessly in space. The battle was over. Zara knew that this victory would be remembered. Human ingenuity and determination had triumphed over the seemingly impossible odds. But even as she let herself breathe a sigh of relief, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. There were more enemies out there, more battles to fight. But for now, humanity had won. And that was enough. The Aegis sailed away from the battlefield, the remnants of the enemy fleet floating behind them like shattered fragments of a once formidable force. The crew stood tall, battered but unbroken. Their unity, their creativity, their resilience, these were the things that had saved them. Zara turned to her crew, a smile tugging at her lips. "This isn't over. But we've won today. And that's something." The Aegis sailed on, ready for whatever came next.